I stood in front of the mirror, blankly staring at the bruises all over my body. Isn't love supposed to be perfect? Didn't he love me? I look up and find my reflection staring back at me, almost as if telling me I'm the same as her, trapped with nowhere to run to and no one left to believe in. How did it all come to this? My story begins after my freshman year of high school, a time that is meant to be filled with happiness, fun, and love. In the beginning, I was fairly popular and spent countless memorable days, but those fun days of high school soon began to end, all because of him, a popular senior in our school, who was on the football team. Naturally, girls were crazy about him, so one day when he approached me, with a mysterious look on his face, my heart skipped a beat. He said nothing and stared into my eyes for what felt like forever before walking away, leaving parts of me confused and other parts of me excited. I'll never forget what happened the next day. I was standing at my locker telling my best friends about my strange encounter with him. Then, I watched her expression turn into a silent gasp as I turned around to find him standing right there. I froze, wondering how should I react, or if he had actually heard our conversation. His expressions didn't give anything away either. My mind couldn't tell what he might have been thinking as my cheeks turned a shade of pink from embarrassment. "Can we help you?" My friend finally broke the silence. In response, he let out a smile and said, "Yes, I would like to take your beautiful friend out tonight." They giggled and signaled me and "I'll talk to you later" before running off, as I stood there shocked and embarrassed all at once. Me? I managed to speak finally, still not being able to meet his eyes. "Well, you're the only one here," he grinned. "Okay, well," I stammered against my words as I tried to grasp the fact that I had been asked to go out with one of the most popular kids at school, while he stood there waiting for my answer. I gave him my number and address, and he told me that he'll pick me up at 7. I couldn't believe what just happened. I was going to go out with the cutest boy in school. That night, all I could think about was how incredibly cute he was and how I couldn't screw things up. I woke up early the next day and started getting ready a couple hours in advance. I made sure to do my makeup, hair, and everything properly. Then I received a text that said he was outside. I went out and got in his car with an anxious heart, but what he said next melted my anxiety away. "You look beautiful." My heart thumped loudly in my chest as we drove to a park. We talked for what seemed like forever. Everything seemed perfect. Then he kissed me. I instantly pulled back because it was my first kiss, and I had no idea what to do. He said nothing and took me home. On the ride home, I couldn't help but blame myself for ruining our date. I felt extremely embarrassed and angry at myself for what just happened. That night, I called my best friend and told her everything. "Forget about him! He's the one at fault for taking things too fast. You did the right thing by pulling away." Her voice echoed on the phone, and my mind agreed. But my heart? It was somewhere else. Later that night, I received his text, and with an anxious mind, I opened it. "I am really sorry about the kiss. I thought you wouldn't mind." This wasn't what I needed to hear. And yet, this was exactly what my heart wanted. I immediately forgave him. And that's when I received another text from him saying that he wanted me to be his girlfriend. This was the moment that I had been waiting for. My heart was beating so fast as I typed yes with my trembling fingers. In the beginning, everything about our relationship was just perfect. He even spent his money on me to buy me gifts and tried his best to make me feel special. We were both so serious about being with each other, but soon, it turned into a possessive relationship, one step at a time, and I realized that it kept getting worse. One day, he pulled me away in front of my friends, tightly grabbing onto my wrist. "Stop! It hurts!" I cried behind him. "Why are you dressed like that?" he snapped. "You are shameless to be walking around like that when you're supposed to be mine." I looked at him, confused, but he shook his head and apologized for saying those things. "It's just that I love you too much to lose you," he said. "You love me?" I asked. It was the first time he had said it to me. He nodded and hugged me tightly, and I closed my eyes feeling his embrace, closing my eyes to everything he said earlier. Eventually, I stopped talking to my friends to make sure he doesn't get angry. I did talk to my best friend, but even so, I was getting distant. Our relationship got more and more controlling, but I didn't realize it until it was too late. One day, he asked me to go to prom with him, and I immediately said yes. At night, he picked me up, along with his other friends, But strangely, every time I answered any of his friends' questions, he got annoyed at me and told me to shut up. He even yelled at me. It felt like he had become a completely different person. Even at the prom, he left me on my own and kept drinking with his friends. He was supposed to drive me home, so after a long time at a boring party, I went looking for him. What I saw next shook me to the core. Him coming out of the bathroom with white substance all over his nose. Of course I knew what it was, and no wonder he was acting so strange. I ran toward the stairs, but he grabbed me and threw me down the stairs, yelling at me that it was my fault because I came looking for him. The next day, I woke up in the hospital speechless. I couldn't even tell my mom what had happened and lied that I fell down the stairs by accident. She hugged me tightly and told me she was glad I wasn't seriously injured. I was able to go home shortly after that, but before we could even enter the house, she got a call and had to go back to work. I was too tired to think or do anything, so I took a shower and went into my room to rest, only to find him standing there. I screamed and told him to leave, but he just stood there with a sad expression on his face. I got caught off guard. I'm so sorry for what I did. He spoke finally, breaking the cold silence. How could you do that to me? I asked with tears in my eyes. He looked down and told me all about how his parents having completely broken him. He broke down crying and telling me he loved me, and I held him in my arms. That's when he began to kiss me, and we ended up sleeping together. It was my first time, but I thought he really loved me because he cried for me. After that, life went back to normal for a while. Of course, he was still possessive, but I was too blind to see that. I stopped talking to my best friend. A few months later, I dropped out of school and ran away from home to be with him. We moved in together, and that was the worst mistake of my life. After that, I never felt the same as I was before. He started hitting me and blaming everything on me. He would often take advantage of me at times because I was supposed to be his property. I had to get permission from him to eat or to even go to the bathroom. At times, he would drug me to have his ways with me and even let his friends do things to me. This went on for months. One day, I finally attempted to leave, but he caught me red-handed. He got so angry that he punished me until I passed out. When I woke up again, I found myself in a dark room with all the doors locked. I sat there, crying my eyes out. I didn't want to remain in this nightmare anymore. I wanted to wake up in my home, safe and happy, but that was no longer my life. I felt extremely stupid for letting myself get to this point. Maybe I deserved it, but that wasn't going to stop me from trying to run away. I looked around and realized he had taken my phone away. That's when he opened the door, telling me I was allowed to come out if I was ready to do as he asked. I nodded, feeling helpless and like I had no choice, only to come out and find him doing drugs again. He eyed me and told me to sit next to him. I sat there for a while and noticed that he was getting sleepy. This was the chance I was looking for. But my body was still too scared to move. I knew he'd wake up as soon as I opened the door and chase me. That's when I noticed my phone sitting on the counter. My only hope now was to call someone before running outside. I got up as quietly as possible. I grabbed my phone and rushed towards the bathroom. But before calling the police, I decided to call my best friend because I really wanted to be with someone I knew when I took that step. I longed to feel safe when my fingers furiously dialed the number. At first, she sounded annoyed because I called her after almost a year. But when I said I really needed her and if she could come to pick me up, she realized something was not right and agreed. Nothing was right. My heart was throbbing from fear of what might happen if he woke up before she came or if he caught me before I could escape. All the horrible things that he ever did to me replayed in my mind as I sat on the bathroom floor crying, waiting for help. I walked to the door with my things in my hands, taking every step as quietly as possible. But before I could even touch the doorknob, my phone rang, and his eyes shot open. My mind instinctively screamed for my body to run, and for once it obeyed. For once my heart, mind, and body all wanted the same thing as I ran for my life. I heard him chasing me, shouting, telling me I'm in big trouble. But I was not planning to get caught. I did not know for sure if that notification was from my friend or if she was outside. My mind said a million prayers as I ran down the streets, panting crazily with him chasing me and almost catching up to me. I saw the car. There it was. Before he could grab me, I opened the door and threw myself inside and screamed for my friend to lock the doors, and she did. He banged on the window, calling me names, and tried to open the door, but I was already out from his clutches. I did it. I managed to escape. We drove off as fast as we could, and she took me to her home. I couldn't stop crying. It took me a while to finally open up to her and my mother about everything that happened over the past few months. But when I did, I finally felt free. We ended up calling the cops, but they said there wasn't enough evidence for him to get arrested. Even though I was unsatisfied with this outcome, I still accepted it. At least we managed to get restraining orders against him. At least I was now safe. I made new social media accounts and changed my number. I also moved to another house and school to avoid ever seeing him. After all this, I have gotten better. I did better in all my classes. I started going to therapy to deal with all the events that happened to me, and still go there to this day. I now understand that the relationship I was in was not what love is and will never be. I am a much better person and have grown a lot since then. I am actually happy again and have never let this stand in the way of my future goals. And I hope that anyone who has gone through similar situations can do so as well.